Welcome. How long has it been since you guys have seen the show?
25 years.
25 years? Is it?
I don't know.
It was just a few weeks for me. Because I was looking for which one I wanted to show, so I looked at a few, and yeah, it's a good one.
I want to talk about why you picked the show specifically, and I want to talk about this episode. I also want to talk about the show in general. Each of you, what is it? How do you remember this show from 25 years ago when you look back and think about this experience that you had?
It was really special for me. It was the first show I cast in LA. I had been working in New York, and it was the first one I did here. And I actually cannot take credit for Brian or the incredible series regulars because I didn't do the pilot, but then I came on after the pilot. And I loved every minute of it. It was really special. Oh, you have.
What? I don't have
I just want to say about that, this was my favorite piece of casting in my entire life. Gwen Verdon was one of my heroes. So when Tracy got her, it was one of those, I think I was teary every time I looked at her because I was just so happy that she was there. And truthfully, I can remember very little else from 25 years ago.
That is
except
fair.
that this was a really special episode.
Yeah, it seems like it. Here's what I remember about it. I think Tommy Schlamme was supposed to direct this one, and he got a show or something, and he canceled. I know, and that was the first time, and then I got an Emmy for it, so I was like, holy shit, I always thank him when I see him. Thank you for taking the show. But otherwise, my whole career would have been done. And here's the other thing I remember, which is not too good. Gwen Verdon, like my mother heard that Gwen Verdon was, and she was like, are you kidding me? That's the biggest thing that's ever happened to you in your life, Betty. I don't know if you know. And I was like, okay.
Have you been on a series, on TV?
No, none of those things. Just Gwen Verdon she was so excited about it. And I, of course, was horrified. Brian, you might even remember this. I hope not. But
I remember everything, Betty.
that's what I'm afraid of. But she was on the floor, in that last scene. It was such a cool last scene. It was so well done. I mean, she was so good. She made me, I goofed up all over again. I got all gooey back there. And I wanted to lean down and speak quietly to her to give her a tiny something, to say something. I don't know. I couldn't have made her better. But unfortunately, I shouldn't tell the story. But anyway, as I leaned down, it was after lunch or whatever, I leaned down and I get a little gas might have gone out of me. And she heard it. I mean, she was right there. There was no way. And I thought, oh my God. Well, I didn't even know what to do. And she looked at me and she says, it's all right, honey. We're all human, don't we? And I was like, oh my God. And I had to tell my mother that because, of course, my mother was horrified. She said, that's the worst thing that ever happened to you.
I explained to Gwen that happened every day. I don't know if you remember, but, she was such an old pro, and, if we were shooting right here and the light sort of ended there, her chair was just on the other side of that light. It wasn't off with everybody else's. She sat right there and just waited.
And she read a book or something. Just like they say in the old days, that's the way everybody did it. Now you have to go to Brian's little room, find him, knock on the door, hope that he'll answer.
And that's a little room, let me tell you. It was the only bathroom there, I think. Actually, I remember Michael Fuchs. I was in what they called it a dressing room. It was really a lean-to that we had over there.
Yeah.
And somebody left the trades in there, Variety, and I never read Variety, but I picked it up and there was a blow-in, and a little blow-in there. And it said, for your consideration, Barbarians at the Gate and Citizen Cohen. And I was looking, wow, this is great, and there was no Dream On. They left us out. HBO left us out. So I had lunch or breakfast with Michael Fuchs, and I said, well, what the fuck, what's going on here? And he was like, well, and he gave me some kind of stuff, and I was like, well, God damn it, I mean, this is kind of fucked up. I mean, what's going on? I mean, this is not good. I mean, what? And he said, so anyway, they wound up doing a mailing. Do you remember this? And that's how what happened with that show happened.
You're kidding.
No, because they.
Well, they had the ACE Awards at that time, which were the cable awards. And here's what I remember about this particular episode. We were nominated that year for an ACE Award for series, for this episode. I think you were. And we were standing, they had the party at a big tent. I was just telling my daughter this. They had the party in this big tent afterwards. I remember looking up and thinking, I don't want to be here when it happens. And that was the night of the earthquake. The earthquake. And then, I'm not kidding. And then at the Emmys, we were really excited because, what's his name, who played Peter, I hate menopause. Thank you, David Clennon. He was giving out the writing award, and David and I were like, oh my God, maybe that's a sign. We didn't get it, but you did. That was nice.
You did win an Emmy for directing this, yes. Okay, here, I have a question for you, Marta. This episode, you chose to show it today, and it seems it was in the 3rd season of the show, and it seems it was kind of a departure from the rest of the episode, as, you know, Martin Tupper's friends aren't all in this as much as they are in the others. A lot of the, yes. And
what you're saying is there are no breasts in this.
There's
That's
no
what you're
breasts, no boobs. But this episode seems either personal or very purposeful. Like, what is the reason for this episode?
You know, we had just come out from New York a few years earlier and had lost so many friends in the theater, choreographers, dancers, actors, so many friends. And this was really early. This was the early 90s, and people weren't yet prepared to do stuff about AIDS, especially in a comedy. And that kind of challenge always gets me all excited and feels like we got to do that. And you have to bring people in a way that they don't know what they're getting into. And yeah, it was you know, David and I both felt really strongly that we had to do something about this. And it was a departure mainly because it wasn't sexual, but the whole thing about HBO at the time is that the only thing they said is that there has to be something in the episode that you couldn't do on network.
Interesting.
And sometimes, you know, it was drugs and not sex. Mostly it was sex. But for us, that was, for this one, just talking about AIDS and homosexuality.
Well, it's so great how in the beginning your character, Brian, you know, is a little standoffish, and in the end you're touching him and hugging him and holding him, and all the fear that you might have had in the beginning has completely gone out the door, and you've created a true friend.
We've been together ever since.
Oh, that's beautiful, beautiful.
You know, I just saw David and Being There. You know, he was in Being There. He was really good in that. Yeah. I mean, that was, yeah. Yeah, no, it was, you know, I was shocked at how much I remembered. I remembered everything from when we shot that, and that's the first time I've seen it since it aired. Yeah.
I just remember that last shot kind of going, I'd like to end this whole movie on that last shot, and not instead of on Brian or anything. And I thought that was good. That was good that everybody liked it and agreed with that.
And you know, I'm just remembering now that I think when I called about Gwen, her reps first said, no, she wouldn't be interested in that. And really, people didn't know too much about Dream On. We really kind of flew under the radar. And then I think I told her what it was about. And again, she had, you know, so many people that she knew in her world who we had lost to AIDS. And I think that's what turned out. I'm just kind of remembering that.
And let me also say, we were one of HBO's first series. We were their first genuine comedy. They had First and 10. I'm not quite sure what that was.
I think we know what that was.
But we, you know, and people would come in time after time to audition, and they would always say, I don't have HBO. That was every actor that came in, I don't have HBO. So they didn't know the show, and they didn't know the tone, and it was always quite an education.
Now, in the series in general, was it, and you can talk about this from an acting and a directing and a writing standpoint, all those clips, which I'm like, who found those clips? Was it fun to write and act and direct, or was it tedious after a while?
Let me start with the downside. And Brian, you'll be able to speak to this. Because we had those clips, Brian had to be in every scene. He worked 12 and 14-hour days every day. By Friday, by Friday, you just wanted to like give him scotch. Because the guy worked, it was crazy. It was crazy. That was the downside, and we learned a lot from that we wouldn't do that to another actor ever again. It was really hard, but it was really hard on him. It was really hard on him because everything came off of that. We had, the way this came about, Universal had this huge library of old television. And they wanted something to do with it. And they wanted to do something with it, and they were going through all these like TV writers at the time were still doing New York theater stuff. So when they were finally scraping the bottom of the barrel and talking to a couple of lyricists, we came up with this idea to do it this way. And somewhere towards the end of the first season, they made a terrible discovery. We were going to have to pay money for any clip that was post-1960, I think it was, if the person was still alive.
Oh my gosh.
Residuals. So suddenly, we can't afford half of these. And we would be looking at clips, go, oh, please be dead, please be dead, please be dead. It was terrifying, it was awful, we felt terrible. But what happened was, in the beginning, we literally, for the pilot, we watched 50 hours of television. But then we realized very quickly that writers weren't going to be able to do that. So we had two researchers. One of them is Greg Malins, who's now a big TV show runner. And what we would do is put in the idea for the ideal clip, and they would comb through all of the stuff and say, here's 3 possibilities.
Okay.
You know, it was funny because in the beginning it was all very, you know, and you want, as an actor, you want to be really specific and have the clip down and know what you're doing, and that's the way it was. And then after a while, it was like the director would say, "Yeah, just do something."
Wait a minute. Did I ever say that? Sometimes we didn't know what the clip was going to be.
That's
It
what
said
I'm
clip
saying.
to come, you know, so that's...
So I was to say, "Yeah, just do something there. We'll put something in there." I remember when I read for Landis, I think I sat down with him and I thought, you know, and walking in the office, I think, I don't know what I'm going to do with this thing. I don't know how I'm going to do these clip things. So I just did that. And he said, "Yeah, that's right. It's fine."
Tracy, from a casting standpoint, you were there was a lot of people on this show who either were something or were going on to be something very big. And just listing down some of the names, and we could be here forever, but Fran Drescher, Terry Garr, James Woods, Mimi Rogers, Sylvester Stallone, Larry Miller, Jennifer Tilly, David Hyde Pierce, Jason Alexander, Matthew Perry, Courtney Cox. How much fun was it, and how interesting that a lot of them hadn't watched the show if they were coming into audition. And David Bowie. David Bowie.
It was something already. It was fun. We really were. Most people, agents didn't say like, "I love that show. That's a great show." We've kind of all had experience on shows that people know and love, and actors are dying to be on. But they didn't really get it. It was kind of like about boobs and swearing, and we were way, way up north where nobody even knew how to get there. And it was fun. I mean, some of those people, you know, we sort of knew. Some we didn't know. Were, you know, as ever. But everyone always had fun. It was a different kind of television experience for everybody, including the guest actors.
But let me say, because Matthew Perry was on that show, that was our first choice for Chandler, because we loved that experience
And
with
that
him.
was the second to last episode of the season.
That is
and
correct.
It was right in their mind, I like to think.
Yeah.
And what about Courtney Cox, too? Was that the first time you had...
That was the first time I
Had
worked with her.
with her.
But when she was there was a whole drama, so it was not about her, but it was like a whole other thing. So that's what I remember about
There
when
were a
she
lot
was
of
there. But we used to call it guerrilla television because we were literally out. We were so far out in North Hollywood. There was a bar in our parking lot. The Web. Guns, motorcycles, and we were in this crappy little warehouse. And he's right. It was like a lean-to, his dressing room. There was nothing in there. We had a folding table for the writer's room.
We used to lie to actors and tell them that their appointments were 15 minutes earlier than they were because they all got lost. They didn't know where they were going.
Brian, was it fun being an actor, and were people ever like, you get to be on television with, you know, boobs? And also, was that ever frustrating that it is such a cleverly written, funny show, and that sometimes, you know, the boobs become the thing that When I talked to my guy friends who were children at the time, that was the show that they got to watch and sneak in and not tell their parents about when they were kids because they got to see boobs.
Well, my parents didn't let me watch the show either.
Good.
One of my old aunts, I think somebody was taking her to a nursing home, and I don't know, wherever she was, and she had one episode, and she said, frankly, I think it's a little too hot to handle. Well, you know, I have to say that the nakedity notwithstanding, I always would, and I don't know if I probably didn't ever tell you guys this, but when the women would come in, and I'd say, look, I don't know what you promised to do here, but if anything's uncomfortable, I mean, you know, because, you know, you make a deal. I said, if anything's uncomfortable, just don't do it. Talk to me. I said, you might get fired, but I'll be in your corner, you know. Because really, I remember it was Harley Kozak or somebody like that. Remember,
We were
right?
just talking about that.
No, that was, she wasn't
No,
the
but
one,
we're-
but yes.
Well, I remember saying hello. I'm glad you could do the show. And then 3 minutes later, she was on like some piece of furniture with casters, and we were having sex. I mean, it was like seconds later.
It was, there were two things that were interesting to me from a director's point of view, and that is, one was the auditions, because you had to say, okay, now I need to see your breasts. And people would go, really? I go, yep, really.
Well, that was acting. That was good acting, because they knew ahead of time. I had a whole thing.
No, of course they knew, but they always were like, really? It's like, really? It's really going to happen.
But here's why. This was the time that everyone was getting breast implants.
That's right.
So these women would come in with what seemed like, you know, regular, lovely breasts, and they'd had these gigantic scars. So actually what we were looking for were, could we cover the scars?
And also, does one do something weird, and is it going to be a thing? I mean, it's weird. And the other thing was that quite often on the set, I would say, because it bothered me as a woman for anyone to feel uncomfortable, and everybody had to be comfortable, so I would say, okay, this is the part where you're bouncing on Brian. Brian, go down there, will you? And I would bounce on Brian, did I not?
She did.
And I would show them.
I've done it to some therapists.
I squished him.
Therapists put a new wing on their house just because of that, let me tell you.
Well, just to make it so that it was understandable. One, that it was an acting exercise. I mean, not an acting exercise, but it was acting. It was all about the acting of it. And two, it was not anything to be embarrassed about or anything else. And then, you know, that's. So
One
it was.
time, I remember Julie Carmen. Remember Julie Carmen?
I do remember.
Yeah, she came on the show, and this is one of those instances because she had to be on top of me and doing something, and she was like, "I'm nervous. I don't know. It's just, what's this going to look like? And all that stuff." And Betty said, "All right." And she got on top of me, and she had this light meter on, and it's like a finder, And, yeah, and she was like going like this. And she said, "How's it look over there, Juki? How's it look?" We go.
On that note, I want to make sure we have a couple minutes for questions from the audience. So if you have a question, please raise your hand. Yes.
Hi. I don't have a question. I just want to thank you all. One of my favorite all-time shows, but I especially want to thank Betty, because without Betty Thomas, this festival would probably never happen. You gave Caitlin McFarland her first job at Cosmos.
If you guys didn't know, that's the founder's mother, Caitlin's mom. And Caitlin said she was allowed to watch the show, and she's younger than me. You're a cool mom.
25 years ago, she was not. When it came out on DVD, yes.
Another question?
So, does it strike you now that Dream On is actually old enough to have been part of the archive clips that would have appeared on the show?
Oh my God, I just got so depressed. Wow.
Thank you.
We're gonna do another whole show with Brian, and that all the clips are his own life.
I honestly didn't know that it had been 25 years until we started talking about it. And I was like, oh my God, I cannot believe that at all in any way. So, yeah, great job with the show as well. Loved it growing up.
Loved it growing up.
Hey, who was the kid in the first? Was that Kevin Bright's kid? No way.
The first baby.
Oh, the littlest baby. That's what I thought. So that kid is like 25 now or so.
24, 23, 24, somewhere in there.
I love the intro. I mean, that is a clever, sets up the whole show in just a very short amount of time.
Yeah, it was a very I love that opening too, and it's great. And actually, it's part of where HBO got their, yeah.
When we shot the wraparounds in the beginning of the show, we went to New York for like 4 days. Mac Allberg, I guess it was Landis, right? Yeah, Landis, myself, and we had no permits at all. And so, that was okay on the first take. When you'd go into the Brentanos, and they'd say, okay, come out, look left and right, and run across the street. And people are standing there looking, and then you go back and do it the second time, they're like, and they said, if anybody asks you, it's a coffee commercial. That's what they said. That's what they told me at the time. So we're bringing the raw film through, the DP, Mac Allberg, myself. Mac Allberg's got long Swedish accent, We're carrying the raw film in boxes, in the cans, and they're going to put them through the machine, and Mac's like, no, you can't do that. No, you can't do that. We almost wound up in jail. They're like, no, we're going to open these cans. It said, no. It was horrible. It was guerrilla filmmaking. Sure.
It was guerrilla filmmaking.
We have time for one more question. Yes.
I'm just curious to know now with social media and everything, could you see this happening in sort of like an online experience, treating it like YouTube videos, clips?
I think it would be really complicated legally to do it that way.
I know from a legal perspective, but I'm just saying from a creative perspective, could you see it as a reboot using technology? I mean, I think for
Yeah, I'm sure there's a way. I'm sure there's a way to use at least the idea of something online as your thoughts or.
They do, mashups and stuff, and I've had people take my movies and do mashups and send them to me, and I'm like, shit, that's just like music. It's kind of good, It's like, I know it's like illegal or something. It's like totally not good in some way, but creatively, it's kind of interesting. So it would be kind of interesting to see, like, anybody could do that, for their own education. I'm just saying, I love these mashup things. It's just.
Well, it gives it another life too.
Yeah, I love it, but I know it's like you can't be pirating or stealing material, and everything's wrong. But it'd be a great exercise, I think, to do.
Well, thank you guys. It's such a cool show because I think all of us here, we're all TV lovers, and we all probably live our lives a little like Martin Tupper in the sense of every instance we come across, we think about a Friends episode or a Sex and the City episode or whatever we grew up watching, and then we live our lives thinking that that happened and I'm good. Okay. So anyway, thank you guys so much, and this is what is so cool about this festival and bringing shows like Dream On back and having a great conversation. And thank you so much for coming.